Here's how to get into contact with just about any CEO in the entire world. Justin, what are you currently doing with a certain airline right now?
Absolutely. So what it is, there's a very specific policy thing that I think can be changed for the betterment of the program for all involved. Ignoring that, the point is that if you can find the executives who are in charge of managing, the various program that you have, and if you can get through to them in a clear, concise, professional manner, there's a good chance you can make your voice heard. At least get some feedback or get some feedback into the system. If you're dealing with a publicly traded company, all of the officers of the company, the CEO, the CFO, the CEO, et cetera, and probably some of the less senior people as well. They're all publicly named, which means that if you can figure out what their email address is, so like first name dot last name at bigcorp.com, you can try sending them an email. That's probably the easiest way, and also probably the least formal way. But if there's something that you feel particularly strongly about, and this is where it gets really, really nuanced, it just can't be like a rant. It just can't be like, oh my God, your company sucks. Why are you such a bad, evil person? No, 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 no. It's got to be something along the lines of, hey, listen, I'm a customer. I use your product or products a lot. In the case of an airline, I travel a lot. I mean, there's your case right there. And there's one thing that I've noticed that is a consistent struggle or that you guys have problems delivering on. And from the other side, from the customer side, this is kind of my take on it. So the key is that you want to basically help them by giving them something useful that they can use. And generally a rant is not a useful thing. So what you can do is type up a one-page paper, make it a formal letter, just Google how to do it or whatever, right? And FedEx it in or UPS it in. But the point is that you want it to be addressed and be tangible. And the way you address it is, find whatever the corporate headquarters office is. And again, this is all going to be publicly listed. Probably not the thing in Delaware, but it's going to be, the corporate address of the companies. United, it's the company I'm targeting. They're out of Willis Tower in Chicago. I know the address. You can basically just address it there. And then you say to, whoever, whoever the person is you're trying to get to. But the goal is that whoever gets the letter, the CEO is probably not going to read it. They might just kind of glance at it, but they say, okay, well, wait a minute. This is a very specific product. The customer probably knows what he's talking about. And if you have been around the block enough, you also know how to kind of speak the lingo and speak the language of the company. That's a really good thing too, or at least of the industry. At which point, you might get a, dear Justin, thank you so much for your letter, blah, 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 blah. But ideally you want it to be passed down to, the sub, executive vice president or senior vice president who's in charge of that very specific area. And if you can get through to that person, then that's a huge win because you don't hear back. You've at least gotten your idea or suggestion to the person, who's kind of in charge of making it. And from the other perspective of the company, like if they get ideas, especially from customers who are try to be intelligent and try to be, constructive and productive, that's really useful. And the best thing that can happen from this, and this is what my old boss did way back in the day, is you can start up a dialogue. And if you start up a dialogue, then, that person might reach back out to you and say, hey, Josh, thanks for your letter, really appreciate it. Generally it's a permutation of this. Look, we've actually already thought about it. And the reason we can't do it, or kind of the thing that you don't understand just because you don't work for the company, is that there's this huge logistical issue over here, which isn't necessarily obvious from the customer side, but if you're on the other side of the desk, it's a little bit trickier. But either way, Josh, to your original point, the way you get in touch with a CEO or any publicly traded or any officer of a publicly traded organization, go to the website, log in investor relations, find out who they are, find the corporate address, and if you want to send an email, you can do that. If you can figure out the email string, or better yet, write up a formal letter. Don't make it more than one page. Clear, concise, useful. UPS it over. There you go.
Yeah, so why would you actually go through the trouble of doing something like this? Because this is a complete hassle. The reason is because you're going to have a mutual benefit for both parties, because Justin would not waste his time if he was just doing a parasitical, this is going to help me greatly. But this is going to screw over the airlines, because he knows that's going to get thrown away instantly. He is quite literally solving a problem that this airline has currently for them. He's making it easy for them to look at this as a potential solution and then say yes. And then in return, he could potentially get connections. But more importantly, this is going to help him with what he wants to achieve with the actual airlines.
Exactly. And remember too, you mentioned the word parasite, and I find that's a very interesting analogy. No parasite wants to kill the host. In any regards. And at the end of the day, and this is, what I try to tell my other frequent flyer buddies, is look, any company you do a lot of business with, you want them to do well, because if they're doing well, they can expand the product, they can make the product better, they can ideally hire better employees if things are being done right. Now, there's a dark side to that too, and hopefully they don't go down that path. But my point is that if you can just be useful, and the way I would define useful is you identify a problem and provide a constructive solution to it, or you try to provide a constructive solution to it, that's actually worth something.
Yeah, I don't think I know a person better than this in the entire world. Obviously, I don't know that many people, but Justin does not just do this with airlines. Anywhere that we go, he will have a problem and he'll solve it. And then if there's an employee, let's say we go to a hotel, He will say,
Mhm.
"Oh, I don't know how this magically appeared, but here's the solution that I see." And then the employee, because the employees don't want to deal with anything either, and you just have to realize that you're dealing with people, and if you make people an actual individual an easy answer for them to say yes to, they are going to do it more times than not. So he'll
Yeah.
do the upfront work to get the benefit that he wants, to make whatever he wants the answer to be, yes or no. He's going to give the person the answer that they need to get the answer that he wants. And you can do this with quite literally anything. And I'm trying to master the craft that I'm absolutely nowhere near the level that Justin is, though.
Well, it's an art. It takes form, and there's some finesse to it. But really, the fundamental thing, it starts with trying to be useful. Like, and again, remember, I just can't stress this enough. Ranting is typically not useful. So just, if you do want to try this approach, like, please don't rant. Like that's just no. That's a bad approach.
Yeah, you could also just show up and bother them, but I would warn you that that sometimes is not the best approach, as I have done that before, and I have been wildly turned down by the secretary's secretary, as I was a wild failure. But sometimes all failures have some success within.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and Josh, one other quick thing too is the other thing I'll say is that I mean, you've seen this a little bit with Lifetime, but you'll see it other ways too. Is that like your social settings? Like if you go to like the nice restaurants, the nice clubs, the nice gyms. When you travel, if you stay at nice hotels, you run into people, and sometimes you run into people who know people. I remember I was doing, I think it was like Cleveland, Los Angeles flight years ago. I sat next to the president for Nestle's America. A guy offered me a job. I mean, I wasn't looking at the time, but like I said, that's just an example of just people you meet, from happen chance.
yeah, this is just a brief example of a way that Justin is currently getting in contact, or potentially get into contact with, some high executives in one of the biggest airlines in the world. But you can kind of take the same principles and framework and do it with absolutely anything in this world. So just a framework into how to get into a discussion with some of these people, with what you do after that discussion, or if you can even solve a problem for one of these business. That is a topic that you need to discuss individually within yourself. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.